So much of Ford's European profitability over the next few years hangs on this car, the Puma GEN-E. It's the Blue Oval brand's first properly car-like small electric model, and it certainly looks likely to shake up its market segment. My name's Jonathan Crouch. I've been testing cars for over 40 years. You'll find them all on the Car and Driving Car Reviews app. Here, I'm going to try and tell you everything that you really need to know about this car in a way that you'll find nowhere else. Let me hand you over to our presenter, Steve.
Astonishingly, Ford still doesn't have a vehicle platform that's purpose-designed for electric vehicles, which is why it borrows Volkswagen's MEB chassis for its larger EVs, and it's why it's had to modify a combustion-based B-car platform for the Puma GEN-E. The same underpinnings then that are used for the combustion Puma, but heavily modified to take a floor-mounted battery. It's hardly an optimum approach, and it explains why this GEN-E doesn't have as large a battery and therefore as large an operating range as Ford and some of its customers might have liked. In the end, the engineer's got a 53 kilowatt-hour pack to fit, although only 43 kilowatt-hours of that is actually usable, and it offers a range of up to 233 miles in the base select version we're trying here. Early reports and our own experience suggest that unless you're overly enthusiastic with the front-mounted 168 PS motor, the EV range figure that's quoted here is rather closer to everyday reality. Although we should point out that the officially rated stats themselves fall to 226 miles with the bigger wheeled premium spec that most will want. Most small EVs deliver steering with all the feedback of a computer game, but with this Ford you can actually feel what the front wheels are doing, and that gives you the confidence to approach a set of twisting corners at hot hatch-like speed if you were to be minded to, at which point you'll also find that body control is excellent, and that's helped by weight distribution, which is even better than in the sweet handling combustion Puma, and impressive grip levels too. So you can flow with deceptive rapidness from bend to bend in a seamlessly urgent manner, which is just not possible with most rivals. There are 4 drive modes here. There's normal, eco, sport and slippery. The brakes are good too, and Ford's done a decent job of blending the friction and regenerative elements of stopping power. There are no paddles to vary the regeneration, just an L button on the shifter stalk and a screen selectable 1 pedal setting, which off throttle allows you to bring the car almost to a halt without touching the brake pedal. Manufacturer options in this segment are divided as to whether a small EV should look radically different to its combustion counterpart. VW Group brands say yes, Stellantis Group makers say no. Well, here, Ford, it seems, has taken something of a middle ground between those two polarizing perspectives. This GEN-E is very obviously a Puma, but it's also very evidently a rather different kind of Puma. And not just at the front, because the underlying B-car platform has had to be adapted for this electric model. The GEN-E is slightly larger than its 1-litre petrol showroom stablemate, 28mm longer and 5mm taller than the combustion version. What you're more likely to notice, though, if you know the petrol model, is a lack of a front grille. It's been replaced by this flush panel, apparently inspired by the brand's Mustang Mach-E, although Ford has retained a moustache-like upper black outline showing where the grille used to be, which does look a little bit odd. At the back, there's also a slightly lower and longer tailgate spoiler and a rear bumper updated around the absence of exhaust pipes. Right, let's take a look inside. Actually, quite a lot's different here, although it might not seem like it at first glance. For a start, you sit a little higher on top of all those battery cells, which some city folk might like, but which we think rather detracts from the sporty vibe, which for us has always pleasantly characterized the Puma. And because this EV version doesn't really need a gear stick, it doesn't get one. The single-speed transmission is controlled instead by a right-hand steering wheel stalk. Getting rid of that conventional gear stick allowed Ford to redesign the central console and the way it flows into the bottom of the central screen. It now offers a raised central section with easily scratchable piano black trimmed cup holders, ahead of which is a large wireless charging tray. What really needed redesigning though, this ugly spherical steering wheel remains like any other Puma, as does this big 12-inch Sync 4 central monitor, the size of which necessitates the need to plonk the twin horizontal air vents just above like something of an afterthought. A bigger issue is that this Gen-E shares the main issue we have with the ordinary Puma, a rather cheap feeling cabin which is largely devoid of the kind of imaginative design that you will find on a few segment rivals. The only really neat touch in that regard is the sound bar that stretches over the central part of the top of the dash. Still, there's nothing much wrong with the screen tech, the instrumental part of which is covered off by the 12.8-inch instrument cluster you view through the unusual two-spoke faux leather stitched wheel. Right, time to take a seat in the rear. Now the ordinary Puma is pretty tight in the back. Will this Gen-E model's extra body length help any here? No is the short answer, although we'd actually feared things might be worse in the back with this Gen-E and its drive battery. That's had to be mounted under this rear bench rather than under the floor, as with virtually every other EV. In the event, space back here doesn't appear to have been very much compromised by that, and instead of the intrusive central transmission tunnel that you get on the petrol version, there's an almost flat floor here, which has liberated some extra foot space. The really impressive thing about the Gen-E though is the boot. It's pretty big to start with for a Super Mini derived car, but look below the floor and you'll find your luggage room supersized by a simply enormous underfloor storage bin that Ford calls the Gigabox, which spans the width of the cargo area floor. You get this on an ordinary Puma too, but here, with no exhaust to get in the way, it can be 65 litres larger at 145 litres. The underfloor area is of course a big contributor to the 574 litre total, which is simply colossal for a small EV of this size, and 118 litres bigger than the petrol model. And we're not finished yet, because in a design touch which is almost unknown for a car without a bespoke EV platform, this Gen-E has an underbonnet frunk, although because it's just 43 litres in size, you might have to cram the charging leads in to get them to fit. There are a couple of advantages to having a slightly smaller battery than is the norm in this class of car. Firstly, charge times are quite fast, although they are restricted by the not especially quick 100 kilowatt charging speed. If you connect this car up to a 100 kilowatt DC rapid charger, you'll be able to replenish the 53 kilowatt hour battery. Only 43 kilowatt hours of that is usable, remember, from 10 to 80% in 23 minutes. A smaller battery means lower weight, of course, too. This Gen-E weighs only 247 kilos more than a petrol Puma. A full AC home charge using a typical single-phase 7 kilowatt wall box should be possible in under 7 hours. You can reduce that to 4 hours 45 minutes if you can charge using a 3-phase 11 kilowatt wall box. A fully electric version of Britain's best-selling car is always going to be big news. Has the Gen-E Puma variant arrived in time to save Ford's European sales operation? Well, it'll need to sell in considerable numbers to do that, but it just might. Now, because it isn't based on a properly bespoke EV platform, it can't set any fresh class standards in terms of range, charging speed or cabin space. You can do significantly better in all three areas with quite a few rivals, most of whom offer better quality cabins too. But crucially, mainly because of the generous level of government grant, all of them are significantly more expensive. And it's that sticker price that'll really sell this car for Ford. Not that this Gen-E lacks unique product selling points. It's better than most of its rivals to drive, it's well equipped, and it's easily got the biggest boot in the class. In short then, Gen Z might quite like a Gen-E. Ford is certainly hoping so.